All right, welcome into a special edition of Sportswrap OT. I am Brian Parsons, along with producer Jeff Snyder, and a very special guest today is Jeff Jones. Thank you for coming in, Jeff Jones, former Old Dominion basketball coach, former American basketball coach, former UVA basketball coach. Coach is in here. He's got a big event coming up in September 12th and 13th at Chartway Arena. It's the inaugural Coaches versus Cancer Gala. Looking to raise $200,000 for cancer research and things of that nature. Coach, tell me about the big event coming up and why it means so much to you.
Well, I'm really excited, and the Coaches versus Cancer has always been an organization that's been special to me, and I've worked with them for years. After retiring, I wanted to do something meaningful, and had this idea about partnering up with Coaches versus Cancer and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. And it basically became this Legends Gala that we're putting on. That's going to combine basketball and a way to raise funds, as you said, for the American Cancer Society. On September 12th, we've got a big gala. We've got a who's who of basketball coaches coming in. Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams, Tubby Smith, Gary Williams, Bob Huggins. Phil Martelli is going to be a moderator for us. Fran Dunphy, and maybe one or two more that we're trying to get confirmed. David Teal told me, he totaled this up. For the initial group of coaches, 6,500 wins.
Wow.
19 Final Fours, 6 national championships, and 5 of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. That's a really cool thing that that those folks are going to be with us for a really good cause in Chartway Arena. Right here, it's in our backyard, and we are. You mentioned the $200,000. That's the stated goal. We hope to go way over that and raise a lot more money for the American Cancer Society.
So how do you go about getting a Roy Williams or a Jim Boeheim? Are they in your phone? You know these guys. All you coaches are in a close-knit community. Do you just call them up and ask them, hey, man, can you do me a solid?
Exactly. And I'm amazed that basically all of those guys, it took one call. And I called them up and I said, this is what we're trying to do. We'd love it if you would come join us. And they said yes. I mean, there wasn't any twisting of arms or anything like that. And we all have some connection with cancer. Jim Boeheim is a prostate cancer survivor. Tubby Smith, the same thing. Bob Huggins, I know he lost his mom to cancer, and at West Virginia, he still has an event up there every year. Roy Williams raises over $1 million every year at an event, a golf event for Coaches versus Cancer down in Pinehurst. So, all of these guys, Phil Martelli's lost family members. I believe Fran Dunphy's wife is a cancer survivor. So all of these guys, it's very personal to them, and they all serve in one form or another on the advisory council for Coaches versus Cancer.
And it's very personal for you. I mean, with your personal experience.
It is, and for me, and I've lost family members and friends to cancer. I mean, virtually, you're really, really lucky and an exception if you haven't been touched by cancer. And the crazy thing is there's been so many advances in technology and in the medicine to fight cancer, but yet every 15 seconds another person is diagnosed with having cancer. So it's really something that we kind of all share. And one of the things that makes it so cool for me, this event, is that we're doing it right here in our backyard, in our community. And all these great Hall of Fame coaches are coming to us. And I'm just so excited about it. We've kind of been getting some publicity the last couple weeks for the event, the gala in particular. And the response has been terrific. I mean, the tables are going quick. We're adding sponsors, and the more people that take part, the more money we can donate to the American Cancer Society to help cancer patients.
And there's the website right there. It's Hampton Roads ACSGala.org for more information on how you can purchase a table and what the event entails. So it's a 2-day event.
It is.
So what are we talking about over the course of the 2 days here?
So basically on Friday will be the gala itself. It'll start off with a reception at Chartway Arena, followed by a dinner in the arena itself. We've got, it's going to be great. It's, great food, great drink, great entertainment. We'll have an area for a auction. For people, a silent auction, and then the actual program, there'll be a couple different things, but Roy Williams and Jim Boeheim and one of the other coaches will be kind of on a panel. They'll be up there in their easy chairs, and Phil Martelli is going to be the moderator for that, and talk about the state of college basketball, and they'll answer questions from the audience. This is an area that's very sports oriented, as you well know. And so I know there's going to be a lot of college basketball fans in the audience, whether they're big fans of Syracuse or North Carolina or just basketball in general. And in this day and age with NIL and the transfer portal and the rise, kind of the notoriety of women's basketball, women's sports, there's lots of great topics that I think we'll touch that evening. So I think it'll be really, really special. And then again, opportunities to raise money in a very, very fun way. I really want it, and we talk. We've got an executive committee, we've got a planning committee, and we talk all the time with those committees that we want this. Not a home run's not good enough. We want this to be a grand slam. And the reason for it is because this is the first year, and we wanted people to have a great time and leave Chartway Arena that night thinking about how do they get a table, how can they sponsor the event the following year, because tables are quite honestly limited, and we're going to have probably about 500 people in there in that building, but it's not an unlimited, we're not selling individual tickets. It's only tables. And so we want people to be excited and have a great time and feel like they accomplished something, that they did something to help others during that gala. But we also want them to sign back up so that we can do it again in the following year.
And has the corporate community, have they stepped up, some of like the people that you've been with at Old Dominion? And
absolutely, our presenting sponsor is Chartway, and we went to them first, and I called up Brian Schools, who's the president and CEO. And I said, Brian, the building has your name on it. I want to give you the kind of the first dibs. And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, we had a meeting and they signed up. So they've been a great partner with us. But there's others that are joining, and we're still in discussion. So I think it's going really, really well. We didn't really go public with this until a couple weeks ago. And prior to that, we were kind of trying to get things all straightened out. But now we're trying to get the word out and get people interested and excited and wanting to join us in one form or another.
Let's take a look, Jeff, at some of the people that are going to be there. Let's run this first picture here.
Yeah, sure.
It's a star-studded cast of people that are coming. You get to rub shoulders with some of the legends here, including coming up, hopefully here. Mm-hmm. Bear with us while we work through all the technology here.
Man, this thing's whoa. What the?
All right, let's talk about Roy Williams.
Got it.
There we go.
Boom.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
This guy.
Sorry about that.
When you see this guy, this is a 3-time national champion, Roy Williams. What's your experience with Roy Williams?
Well, Roy was on the UNC coaching staff as a very young coach when I was playing at UVA. And then as assistant coaches together, when I finished my playing career, I got to know him, during that time. But mostly I've gotten to know him since I've become a head coach, and as he obviously has had a Hall of Fame career. He's he's one of the really good guys. He not a whole lot of pretense. He's, like I said, I had his phone number. I called him up and he said, Jeffrey, let me tell you, he calls me Jeffrey, let me check one thing. And sure enough, and he said he'd love to do it. And as I said, he's a terrific person, was a great coach, an ambassador for college basketball, both at Kansas and at North Carolina.
Do you bring up 1995 every time you see him?
I never bring it up because I know he remembers it.
In 1995, UVA defeated Kansas in Kansas City, of all places.
Kansas City, they were the number one seed.
To advance to the Elite Eight.
A 4 seed, and we played well. We did not consider that an upset, despite the differences in seeding. We were very well prepared. Our guys played well. Unfortunately, we lost to Arkansas and Nolan Richardson 2 days later.
The Corliss Williamson, would he have been on that
Corliss
team?
was there. Nolan, it was the 40 minutes of hell.
Oh boy.
Scotty Thurman, Corey Beck, those guys. We just didn't have enough. And one of the things in that game, not to go off on a tangent, but what I found out, that 40 minutes of hell, was designed to wear down the opposing team. The 40 minutes of hell also wore down the officials. As the officials, they called so many fouls because they fouled all the time early in the game. Nolan was complaining the whole game, and by the last 8 minutes or so, they quit calling the game the same way. They weren't calling the same fouls, and that's right about the time when we got worn down physically, and they edged. They went ahead by about 8 or so.
And it really worked. It worked in 1994 because they won the national championship the year before.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Next picture, Snyder. Mm-hmm. How about this guy?
Jim Boeheim, it's funny because he's got a scowl on his face right there, and people don't think of him really as having a great sense of humor. Jim Boeheim, it's very dry. He might be one of the funniest people that I know. Obviously, he's been a great coach. Not only did he win a ton of games, over 1,000 I think, at Syracuse, but he was Mike Krzyzewski's assistant coach for some of those Olympic runs that they did. So just a great coach. As I said, he's a cancer survivor and is very, very active with Coaches versus Cancer. And
you got a big win over him at the Carrier Dome a couple of years ago with Old Dominion.
And I certainly do not bring that one up either. That was a great time. We flew up there. We won the game. We got the check because it was guaranteed. There was no way they were coming back here. We were back here in enough time that when I got back to my home here in Norfolk, my wife and I drove down to Virginia Beach and went on the boardwalk for the Christmas lights that night. That's a good day when you can beat an opponent like Syracuse, get paid for it, and be back home and sleep in your own bed.
Not too shabby. Next photo.
There you go.
Oh my! This is my favorite.
Gary's a great guy. I've known Gary for a long time, and his assistant coaches for much of his time, Jimmy Patsos and Billy Hahn, who has passed away. Great friends. Another great coach. You talk about intensity. He used to take pride in the fact that he would. He would sweat through his clothes every single game. He brought it. It didn't matter if it was a non-conference game or a conference game or whatever it might be. He got after it. I remember in the ACC tournament one year, my father and brother sat directly behind the Maryland bench because we had the second game in the ACC tournament, and they loved it. And Gary could come up with some very colorful language, and they said, it was just so much fun to see him in action.
What do we got? Next one. This is a good one.
Tubby's just one of the nicest guys. If you didn't know that Tubby Smith had won, all these games and the national championship and all that, if you were just talking to him, you wouldn't know that he's this famous guy, very successful guy, because he's as humble and down to earth as anybody I've ever been around.
Coached Minnesota, Kentucky, Tulsa, High Point. I might be leaving somebody
Georgia,
out.
maybe.
He coached a lot of teams.
He did, and High Point was his last stop. High Point, I believe, is his alma mater. So it kind of came full circle for Tubby.
It's very interesting to see what they've done too with the investment that High Point has made into their sports. I don't know if you've seen what they've done with their basketball facility.
I've heard it's a beautiful facility.
Beautiful facility, and I think we got one more of the coaches that are coming here.
What else do we have?
We had Huggy.
We do not.
Oh, well, I meant to have a picture of Bob Huggins. Another character of a coach that's been around.
Again, another great coach, another terrific guy that I'm not sure his public persona matches with what those of us who know him and people that know him well really think.
He plays it up.
Oh, he does. I mean, he likes being the villain, but he's such a soft-spoken, nice person that people would probably be shocked if they got to sit down and have dinner with him or something of that nature.
Apollo High School in Owensboro, Kentucky. What was it like growing up in Owensboro, Kentucky? And I've got to ask, have you ever visited the world's largest sassafras tree?
No. Is that in Owensboro?
That is in Owensboro, Kentucky. I
had no idea.
Did Jeff have his first kiss under the sassafras tree? I was hoping.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know it was there. Now, Owensboro also at one time was in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the per capita, the home of fast food.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's really a good thing.
Yeah, but it's apparently it was a place where fast food franchises would, they'd stick a store in there and see if it was going to work. But no, Owensboro was a great place to grow up. We didn't have a whole lot to do, quite honestly. It's a combination of a rural area, and there was a Green River Steel was an industry there. So farming, the steel industry, and coal mining, strip coal mining, not like in eastern Kentucky with the mines, but strip coal mining, where they'd wipe out acres of of land with really, really, really big equipment. But those were kind of the three industries there.
Did you ever cross paths with the NASCAR's Waltrip boys, Michael and Daryl? Well, Daryl would be much older.
Daryl was older. Michael was younger than me. He went to Apollo High School with me. But the NASCAR guys, David Green, Jeff Green, and Mark Green, they were always fooling with their go-karts, but they lived right around the corner. We lived in the same neighborhood, and those guys, they were also really good baseball players. We played sandlot baseball, sandlot football. Back then you didn't have stuff organized by all the parents and all the leagues and all that. So those guys, it was really interesting to see how their careers in car racing, motor racing, really developed. But I will tell you one thing about Apollo High School. In its day, when it was first built, Apollo High School was the school without walls. All the buildings at that time were all circular, and they had dividers, but there was not a wall that existed within those buildings other than the main office. Other than that, it was just big open space, which was a different. Certainly a different thing to get adjusted.
Does it still stand?
It does, but they put up walls inside and added to it, so it's not the same experience that we went through back in the 70s.
Your father, Bob, was a very successful coach at Kentucky Wesleyan.
Yep.
Won a national championship. To what degree did his influence in growing up with him get you into coaching?
Well, I think it was more, rather than coaching, it was just being around the game of basketball. And I fell in love with basketball very, very early on. There is a picture floating around our family when I'm 2 years old, crawling around on the floor. My dad was still playing, I believe, at Georgetown. on the basketball court, and I was the head of basketball, and I was, just rolling around on the basketball court. So I was around it literally from the time I was an infant.
Destiny.
And my dad was great. I mean, I would go and I would watch him coach, and I would learn about the game. I would learn about coaching. But I think all of those lessons also helped me as a basketball player as well. But I knew I wanted to do something in basketball very early on. I didn't decide on coaching until after I graduated from UVA. When I graduated from UVA in 1982, I had 5 job offers in the real world, I'll say. We graduated on Sunday, and on Monday morning, I had the 5 job offers. And I wasn't excited about any of those job offers.
Were they like sales, corporate sales, and
insurance
things?
sales,
Right.
and that kind of thing. And I wanted to, I got drafted by the Indiana Pacers. I wanted to see where that would take me. And then when I was cut by the Pacers after the summer league, the Golden State Warriors picked me up on as a free agent. And so I went out there and actually made the team, got injured, and then my season and career was essentially over. I wasn't going to extend it. I had an offer to go play in Europe, but at that time, playing in Europe wasn't what it is now. And I was very, very fortunate that Terry Holland had saved me a spot on his coaching staff. I went back in December, I think it was, and I went back and kind of never looked back. Coaching wasn't something that I had planned on, but it was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down, and I fell in love with it.
How did you get to UVA? You must have been very successful at Apollo. Did you win a state title?
We didn't. My senior year, we went 35-1, and that one game we lost to Shelby County in the state tournament, and they went on and won. We were the best 2 teams in the state. We had beaten them in a big tournament, a big Christmas tournament. But
Terry had UVA kind of rolling by the time they had just recently won an ACC title, right? Or
well, they won in '76, but I wouldn't have said they were improving, but they weren't among the best in the ACC. The big reason was that Jeff Lamp, Lee Raker, and Terry Gates, who all had played previously at Louisville Ballard High School in Louisville, Kentucky, and their coach, Richard Schmidt. We beat Richard Schmidt's former team, in a Christmas tournament. That coach called Richard Schmidt and said, "Look, you should recruit this kid down at Apollo." They started recruiting me, and then basically my final 2 schools were Virginia and North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
But ultimately, the Kentucky connection of Richard Schmidt, Jeff Lamp, Lee Raker, and Terry Gates was the deciding factor in me going to Virginia over going to North Carolina.
4-year starter?
Yes.
Do you have a picture of Jeff?
Absolutely.
A young Jeff.
Look at that.
Look at it. Just tough guy.
Oh,
Look
there
at
you
that.
go. There you go.
An NIT championship, a Final Four appearance. So I guess your senior year, when did Ralph get there?
Ralph got there my junior year.
Okay, so
1981.
It's not the internet age. There's no Twitter or anything like that. What's the lore of Ralph Sampson? What are you
I'm sorry,
hearing?
Ralph got there in 1980. So we won the NIT that year, his freshman year, which was frustrating because we felt like we would have been much better, and we had issues and weren't as good as we could have or should have been, but we put it together at the end of the regular season and won the NIT that year. That next year we spent the entire season in the top 2 or 3 in the country, and it was so much fun. And I think in some ways we showed other sports at UVA that yes, you can win big time. You can win nationally at UVA.
What did Terry Holland say in the locker room after the Chaminade game?
I wasn't there. So that was 1984.
Oh, okay.
So prior to that trip, I had just gotten back from the Golden State Warriors and was part of the staff, but they hadn't really they didn't know, so they hadn't bought me a ticket and all this stuff, because that trip didn't just go to Chaminade. That trip went to Japan, where they played 2 games, and on the way back, they played Chaminade. So I was with them. They left immediately after. I don't know. This was like the game of the century one between Ralph Sampson and Patrick Ewing up at the Cap Center.
Yeah.
And so after that game, they were flying out the next morning, and I drove back to Charlottesville because I wasn't going on that trip. I drove back to Charlottesville in one of the worst snowstorms. It took, I want to say, 5.5 hours to get back to Charlottesville. Normally, it's like a 2-hour drive. And so I heard about it. I didn't even stay up and listen to the Chaminade game. I heard about it the next day, and I just couldn't believe it.
I mean, to paint the picture, Snyder, are you aware of what this is? This is a number one UVA team with Ralph Sampson.
Yeah.
Was Chaminade NAIA? Were they even NCAA? I don't even know if they were.
NAI or Division II. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, pretty crazy moment there.
Mm-hmm.
But so the NBA career didn't work out. So you get into, if we go to the next picture
Yeah,
here, you end up
course.
in the coaching ranks.
There he is.
And there's a young,
wow.
there's a young Jeff Jones. So Terry Holland hired you to be on his staff.
Yes.
And
I was on his staff for 8 years. Back then, the NCAA had rules, so you only were allowed at that time 2 coaches to recruit. But so I was not. We had Jim Larinaga and Dave Odom were the assistants that were allowed to recruit. I came in and I was in charge of mail outs and a lot of different stuff, but I did have the opportunity to get on the court and coach. And I was very appreciative of that. And that was the most fun thing to me throughout my coaching career. It was working with the team, working with the players on the court.
so Terry Holland, by the way, one of the nicest gentlemen I'd ever met in my entire life. And so he retires and you get the job at 29, 30 years old. How old were you? Were you 30?
I was 29 when I was hired. That whole thing was kind of a fiasco. He decided, and I remember when he decided he was going to retire at the beginning of the season. And I can remember when, before he told anybody else, he and I went running, and we finished up, and we were stretching afterwards, and he said, "JJ, I've had enough. This is, I can't do this." He was going to, he was going to retire effective at the end of the year and all that. So we went through that year and had a pretty daggone good year, by the way. But we didn't know what our future was going to hold. And then late, towards the end of the season, after the season, actually, Jim Copeland, who was the athletic director at the time, I would have loved to have been the coach, but I wasn't even in the consideration. I was probably the odd man out, and they brought in Pete Gillen and Mike Montgomery and Rick Barnes, and they flew me back from the Final Four for Mike Montgomery's interview, because they weren't going to. They wanted me to stay on with whoever came. Became the next coach.
Mike Montgomery interviewed for the UVA job?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
So but they flew me back, and Mike Montgomery, I assumed Mike Montgomery had been offered the job, because Mike Montgomery told me, he said, "I want you to look up and get the contact information for every kid 6'10" or better that has good grades." And I was like, okay. And again, I was in Denver for the Final Four, and I flew back specifically because they wanted me back. So I start working, and I assumed Mike Montgomery would be offered or had been offered the job and was being the next coach. And this was kind of my job interview. They didn't offer it to him when he left. And he got mad, got a big raise at Stanford. And so he was out of the picture. I want to say Pete Gillen was, at that time, the AD at Xavier, declined Jim Copeland permission to talk to Gillen, which in this day and age that wouldn't have mattered. But which left Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes came in and was offered the job, and Coach Holland came in. He was still around, and told all of us that Barnes had been offered the job. He had accepted the job, and that he was not going to retain any of us, Craig Littlepage or myself. So I was like, well, what the heck? I wasn't quite sure what to do. I was kind of stunned. I'd been at UVA at that point for 12 years, 4 as a player, 8 as an assistant coach. So I said, I'm just gonna go home, and I tell you what, I didn't go home. I went to Richmond just to watch an AAU practice. I didn't know what else to do, so I figured I'd just go watch an AAU practice. I went and walked into the AAU practice, and if you remember a name, Dick Tarrant.
The Richmond head coach, yeah,
great coach. Yeah. He said, "Wow, it's crazy, right?" With Rick Barnes, and I said, "Yeah, he accepted the job, and I'm out of a job, and I got no idea." He said, "No. He got back. He went back and he changed his mind." I said, "What?"
So is this when he went to Clemson?
No, he went back to Providence.
Oh, Providence, probably.
And Dave Gavitt, when he got back, Dave Gavitt was the commissioner of the Big East, and he talked him out of it. Said, "You're not going to Virginia. You're going to stay here." So Barnes was out. So I was like, "Holy cow!" What? So I leave the AAU practice and I go back home, and that's during the time where you still had these answering machines, right? I get home and my answering machine is overflowing.
The cassette is full.
Yeah, it's full. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And the media and different people. 2 days later, I go in, I interview with Jim Copeland. And then the next day, I believe it was a Friday, and it was our basketball banquet, our season-ending basketball banquet. Still didn't know anything. Everybody was kind of, in shock with everything going on. But so I walk into University Hall, and Copeland meets me there, says hello, and we're walking, and, the people are kind of down the hallway a little bit. And he kind of says out of the side of his mouth as we're walking, he says, "You still want the job?" And I looked at him and said, "Hell yeah, I do." He said, "Well, congratulations, but you can't tell anybody tonight." I'm like, wow. So I'm sitting there for the whole banquet, right? I don't tell my wife. I don't tell anybody. And then after the banquet, we all got together over at Coach Holland's house. I couldn't tell anybody then either. I was afraid if I didn't want to leak it. So it wasn't until a day or two later, and it got out. And
so you go from out of a job to
having my dream job.
To having your dream job. Wow,
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So, as a lot of things, so time runs out at UVA, and then you go to Rhode Island for a season. You don't even take a year off. You go to
I did take a year off.
Okay.
In between, so the 98-99 season, I was getting paid, and I just wanted to recalibrate, and I got to spend the summer with my kids, which coaches these days talk about their schedules, and they got to back then you went out recruiting for a couple weeks, you came back, you did your laundry, and you went again. You didn't have these downtimes that the guys do now. So it was a little bit different, but I got to spend that summer with my kids in a way that I hadn't since I started coaching. And that year I treated it as a sabbatical. I went to Cincinnati. I went to with Bob Huggins. I went to Xavier with Skip Prosser. I went to Wake Forest with Dave Odom. I went to Kentucky with Tubby Smith. I went to Utah with Rick Majerus. In every place, I spent a couple days just observing, talking basketball, and trying to learn. And it was a great experience.
Just getting ideas around also too, right? Around all these brilliant minds.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you learn new ways of doing things, but it also reinforces things that you might want to do your way. Gary Williams was another one. I went up and spent time with Gary at Maryland. So it was a really good year, but I wasn't ready. I didn't want to, and it would have been basically the death knell for my coaching career if I was out a second year. I actually applied for the University of Rhode Island head coaching job, didn't get the job, but Jerry DiGregorio, who got that job, had never been a head coach before at the collegiate level, and he called me in May or June and said, "Hey, do you want to come up? You'll be my associate head coach, and you'll help me, learn how to be a head coach." And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but you need to know I applied for your job." He said, "Yeah, I don't care about that." So I went up there. It was a very interesting year, and the American University job came up, and I was like, that's the one. I interviewed at Eastern Kentucky and a couple other places. That's the one, that kept me close to Charlottesville, where my kids, my kids were living. And so I did everything I could to get that job. I interviewed there, had to wait, but ultimately that worked out, and it was a great experience. We loved DC. American, the first year, I think we went 5-25, something like that. It wasn't good, whatever it was.
And American, not known as a basketball powerhouse. Let's just say
American had 10 straight losing seasons.
Yeah, well, there you go.
9 straight, and then my first year made 10.
And then eventually you led them to their first
We
ever
did.
NCAA
But
tournament.
The next year, my second year, we were the biggest turnaround in the country.
Okay.
And so we were able to kind of flip things. And so that first year, our first, second, and third years at American, we finished, we played in the championship game of the Patriot League tournament. So, we were doing some things right, but we couldn't break through. We didn't cross that threshold. It wasn't until the 7th year, and it was our 5th time playing in the championship game, that we won the Patriot League tournament and got the NCAA bid, and then we followed it up again in 2009. That was a great feeling. There is a picture of me sitting on the bench next to John Feinstein, who had become a really, really good friend, and I was sobbing on the bench. We'd been so close. We kept knocking on the door, and finally we were able to break through. That was a really, really emotional moment, and the first time an American had ever been to the NCAA tournament. So that was kind of cool.
So then the Old Dominion opportunity opens up, and you take over a program that had kind of fallen on hard times, and within a couple of years, you've really got the train rolling. You've got the team humming. The NCAA are about right. You kind of got in at a bad time too, because it feels like the mid majors weren't getting the opportunities that they were even 5 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Because if you look at 2011, 3 teams from the CAA made the NCAA tournament.
Right.
By 2015, there was a 0% chance that would happen again.
Yeah, and it's just gotten worse since then. It's crazy, but came to Old Dominion, and the interesting thing is, I'd known Wood Sillig for a long time, and so after the American year ended, I called Wood, and he said, "JJ, we've got these other guys. It's probably not it's probably not going to work for you to be a real candidate here." And then some different things happened, and they called me up and said, do you still want to come and interview? And I said, of course I do. And so I came. Apparently I interviewed really well, because a couple days after that, they offered me the job, and I had my hands full. Blaine Taylor had done an amazing job at Old Dominion, but sometimes things don't just work out, and so we had a lot of work to do, and I ended up changing the roster, flipping it as best we could that first year. And once again, I think that first year, 2013-14, we once again, they were 5-25 the year before. We ended up being 18-18. That's still a lot of losses, but there was a lot more wins.
That's a huge improvement.
The following year we had some guys like Nick Biberai and Trey Freeman,
the two local guys
sitting out, and so they came. That next year we made it. We had John Arledge came in as a transfer, Javante Douglas. We ended up
27-8. 13-5 in the league play, NIT Final Four.
Final Four, and we were the number one team. We were the last team out.
Yeah, what happened? What game was that? Was that a UTSA loss or something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
You had to fly to some weird place in some high school dinky gym.
Yes.
Like UTSA had with a dead atmosphere.
Yeah.
And that
killed our RPI and we were out.
The thing with Conference USA back then is the top half of the league I thought was very, 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 very good. The bottom half was awful.
Yes.
When in 2015, when Middle got a 15 seed, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This doesn't even make any sense. Is this committee watching basketball?
Well, I wondered on that. And when Middle Tennessee twice, but when Middle Tennessee beat Michigan State, everybody was going crazy.
They were a 15 seed. That was not a 15 seed.
No, I mean that was the committee screwed Michigan State on that one.
Yeah.
They were at least a 13 seed, but that same year you had UTEP, ourselves, Marshall,
UAB, Western was good,
and in the NIT. And
in the NIT. Right.
People don't understand how good that Conference USA group of teams were because of the teams at the bottom. And it's funny now because of what Florida Atlantic has become, but they were an RPI drain. FIU was an RPI drain. Rice was an RPI drain. There were
San Antonio.
San Antonio. So it was the really good at the top, as you say, and the really bad at the bottom, and that affected everybody's RPI.
I mean, in 2018, you're 25-7 and 15-3, and don't even get an NIT bid. That's how bad the NCAA is treating the mid majors at this point. So It's pretty wild. But in 2019, it all comes together. Probably, obviously, the best team you had at Old Dominion that won the conference. Jeff, we can roll the video here. This is the conference championship final or tournament.
This is a huge play. I mean, you were playing it early. That's huge.
Look, that's the go-ahead shot with 3 seconds to go. And that's was that the quarterfinals? Now we're in the semis. And that's Ahmad Kaver with a pass to Xavier Green, to take the lead. And then this is the championship game. Not quite as. We can just let this repeat too.
Yeah,
Jeff.
sure. And that was the third time we had beaten Western Kentucky that year. But Western Kentucky was really good. The thing that it didn't show on here that the UAB game in the semifinals, right at the end. So we go ahead, and there's only a second or so, and so we're kind of in soft full court. But we didn't care. Let them catch it, make them catch it in front of us. Don't foul. They didn't have enough time. Aaron Carver falls down at midcourt, and they throw it in. The big kid, and I'm blanking of his name. He's running wide open, and unfortunately the pass goes out of bounds. He could have caught that and laid it in, all because Aaron Carver he fell down. He tripped and fell down. It would have been a fluke. That would have been a crushing way to lose that game.
The third different team that you had taken to the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, you ran into a very tough Purdue team. That I guess they went to the Final Four, right?
Well, they didn't. UVA beat them on the. It's a great play, but it was. Let's say they were very, very fortunate.
UVA was extremely fortunate in that tournament.
Well, I actually think that Purdue was probably the best team in the NCAA that year, but Virginia made that one big play. Purdue was ahead.
Was that the one with the Kihei Clark with the pass?
The pass
to
and
Mamadi
Diakite, made the crazy shot.
Unbelievable stuff there. Would an 18-year-old Jeff Jones had, or let's say a 20-year-old Jeff Jones, would a 20-year-old Jeff Jones had entered the portal? Would you consider the transfer portal?
Well, interestingly enough, I did consider leaving Virginia after my freshman year. But fortunately, I didn't. We didn't lose very much in high school. My freshman year, and we played in the NIT. I think we may have lost 10 or 12 games that year. That was a lot. That was a tough season for me, and I led the ACC in assists, and I started and all that. But it was a different it was a different experience, and fortunately, as I said, I stuck it out, we had a lot of fun together. We won a lot of games, but no, as you're asking, I have a hard time, and I think people that know me understand. With the whole transfer portal thing. I get it. I'm not saying people shouldn't. I'm not going to play the loyalty card or any of that. But to me, there's something to be said for kind of going through tough times and growing. And I think one of the things that has happened, and it's a unintended consequence, but by allowing these kids to transfer multiple times with no penalty, it seems like every time there's some difficulties, there are challenges and things don't go their way, they just jump. They do it from high school to high school, from AAU program to AAU program, and I think we're losing out. Okay, forget about college basketball, right? But I think there's an opportunity to learn life lessons in athletics, all sports. And one of them is perseverance and developing an ability to fight through things and still be successful.
All these kids, they want to bring up adversity, but they don't want to go through it.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And there's adversity anywhere you look, right? But leaving because you don't like how many shots you're getting or the style of play, or there's some legitimate reasons, but every little time. Well, how about these guys that have been to 4 or 5 different schools? Mm-hmm. You can't tell me that's healthy. And then the other thing that gets lost in the translation is, and it's the individual's choice, right? I can't make that choice for them. The NCAA can't. So it is their choice. But the whole academic piece has been lost. Every time you transfer, right, you're losing credits, and you're not starting over, but you're not starting at where you left off. I don't know that I necessarily trust some of these graduation rates that people put out now, because everybody's taking online courses, and there's just some issues that I'm glad I'm not in it anymore. And going back to something I said earlier about how much I loved practice when I just started out at UVA as an assistant coach, that was the one thing that I missed last year. Being in practice, working with the staff, the camaraderie there, working with the team, the relationships, and being a group with one goal and trying to get better. I miss the heck out of that.
I personally feel like you should players should get a college credit for playing basketball. Why isn't that a class? Why isn't that 3 credits? Okay, that's going to wrap it up, Jeff.
Before we go, we do have a little bit of breaking news here. Old Dominion men's head basketball coach Mike Jones announced today a home-and-home series with Norfolk State over the next 2 seasons. The Monarchs will host the Spartans at Chartway Arena of November 11th this year, and then play crosstown at Eccles Memorial Hall November 11th of next year. Both games fall on Veterans Day in support of military in the Hampton Roads area.
I wish we had more time, because I have a feeling Coach Jones would have a lot to say on that subject. My
mother always taught me, if you don't have anything good to say, not to say anything at all.
Woo, I've seen some stuff. Okay, so September 12th and September 13th at Chartway Arena, the inaugural Coaches versus Cancer Gala. Jeff Jones, thank you so much for joining us. We have the website up here on the screen. Yeah, Snyder, give it up here.
Bring it back up one more time.
For more information on how you can acquire a table at this event. It's selling fast, but there might be some opportunities for people to get in there. It's a 2-day event with some of the best college basketball coaches in the history of the game coming in. Jeff, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure.
That's it for Sportswrap OT. We'll see you next time.